Oops, I'm not doing that. We are doing defense in depth. Okay, so now we're going to switch for a little bit at least about what we're going to do to defend against security issues. The idea of defense in depth is that if one defense falls, there are still others intact. And we'll talk about various defenses as we go, but you need to remember there should be multiple ones going on. So you can think of this like you have a castle. Draw a little castle. This looks like a castle. It's going to be a great castle. Walls. There's my little house inside. And it's got another. You guys have all seen the Lord of the Rings, right? You guys remember in Two Towers they go and visit they retreat because they're going to be attacked by the bad guys, and they all retreat to Helm's Deep. I like Helm's Deep because it has defense in depth. So Helm's Deep is like this huge old castle, and then there's like this huge wall up here, which is where all the elves were standing up, and it had the little drain hole with the water coming out. How good I am at drawing stuff. And then there's like canyon walls up here. It's in a canyon, you guys remember that, right? There's like, I don't know how they had this. Then there's like a big ramp. Remember the ramp? And then they're trying to get up the ramp with the bad guys, bash down some gate or something, and there's this huge thing. Anyway, so the walls retreat. But the idea is, remember the guy comes in with the bomb and it goes kaboom and he blows up this. So the wall fails, but there's still more to come. Y'all ever seen like a castle? Like out in front of the castle, there's no trees out here. That's the first line of defense. So there'll be trees down here. What's the first line of defense? You guys know? There's going to be a moat up here too. There's bad alligators in here. Yeah. Mine are like little. Great. Look at that. That's an awesome moat. Oh, and there's a drawbridge right here. Drawbridge there. So the big open field is usually as far away as you can hit with a bow or a catapult, if you had catapults in your castle. Then the guys would have to camp with their army. You could see them when they were coming and shoot at them. So that's why they had to build those crazy siege instruments with the tower, the blocks on them and stuff. Come on, that's awesome. So that's your first line of defense, is shoot them where they go. Then you want them to get stuck in here, and you can dump hot oil on them or whatever else. Then they bash through the wall, and hopefully there's more walls inside. Like remember in the Two Towers, they retreat, and then they have to retreat again, and then they're all the way back in this little cave back here, and then they come and save the day. So we do the same thing, defense in depth. And what we do, or one way to do it, is to do protection at multiple layers. All right, so if we want to secure, let's say, our data from, we'll just put outsiders. So we talked about data leakages or whatever else. I can start at layer 5, my application layer, and I can protect with username and a password, and then I can restrict access. Does that make sense? Oops. Put by user. So if you don't have a username and password at all, you can't see any data. If you have a certain username and password, like if you're a student and you're trying to get into Blackboard, then you can see certain things in Blackboard, your grades. If I log in though, I can see everyone's grades and change them. And then there's probably some administrator out there that can like assign who can do what. There was a question. We'll encrypt at a different layer, actually. Normally, you don't encrypt up here. Sometimes you do. Some people do. Usually, you encrypt at the next layer down. Oops, I forgot to put application. So this is the application layer. At the transport layer, we can encrypt, and that is app to app. Oops. Okay. This is what the secure sockets layer does. Works at the transport layer. It encrypts the socket, right? So it's between applications on the computer. We can also block access by the port number. Okay. So we could say, for example, there's going to be an application, maybe there might be applications running on a computer that people just can't access, or certain people can't access, or some other stuff. This is what your firewall does. We'll talk more about what a firewall does later. In layer 3, we can also encrypt. This would be host to host. Okay, so at layer 3, I can encrypt everything going into and out of my computer. Here, it would be everything going into and out of a certain socket on my computer. You guys following that? Sometimes we don't encrypt. I'll show you what we do in a minute. In terms of that. So we can encrypt host to host, and we can also block access by the IP address. This is also a firewall function. Firewall. Okay. All right, blocking access by IP address. So that's something the firewall can do also. And then layer 2. So when we're at the data link layer, your Ethernet, we can actually require people to log on. So if you get inside, for example, your data center, you can actually make it so they need a username and a password. This is the same, you guys see this all the time when you're doing your wireless. So if I go to connect to a certain wireless network, I have to type in a username and password. You can do it just on your wired Ethernet too. When someone plugs into a port, they have to actually log in. And then the final one, at the physical layer, we're going to secure, we'll just say physically, which basically means you're going to lock things up. We're going to have guards, etc. So the idea here is, maybe if someone steals our server, the things up here would prevent them from getting in also. If someone comes into our building that wasn't supposed to, well, they still won't be able to access the application. The scary part, though, is if they break into your application, you're usually just screwed. So if they get a hold of a username and password, then you're basically stuck. That's kind of scary. So the idea is defense in depth. We want at least one thing left if someone hacks something else.